A pleasant day to the community of research enthusiasts. For the introductory part of this research presentation, it was mentioned by the National Research Council of 2012 that science education throughout the previous decades highlighted on strategies to improve the quality of science education and enhance effective school-based science education programs. But the next big question here is that why is it that there is a need for us to have the enhancement and development of the quality of science education? So, because of the existing problems that we encounter for the 21st century science education, many students perceive that science education is a difficult discipline to study. And one of the reasons there are as follows. First, many learners perceive that science-related courses like medicine offer such tasks that are too complex and too difficult to apply. Second, concepts in sciences cannot be perceived in our everyday lives. Application of research and scientific concepts cannot be visualized in the teaching-learning process. Third, many students perceive that science is a difficult subject because it is too mathematical. It requires mathematical skills, analysis, and interpretation, just like in the field of chemistry and physics. In addition to that, science requires the conduct of research in order to come up with innovations. And many learners perceive nowadays that conducting research is a difficult task that they need to comply in order to pass the requirements and the subject as well. Lastly, science education is perceived difficult because of the implementation of traditional methods of teaching, that is, teacher-centered approach. One of the difficult disciplines perceived by the learners in the field of science education is chemistry. As part of the background of the study, the researcher encountered some negative attitudes during the teaching-learning process among the students regarding General Chemistry 1. Many learners perceive that chemistry is too mathematical and it is too abstract when it comes to its nature, most especially if they are dealing with the study of atoms, along with its structure and properties. Moreover, aside from the nature of the subject, another contributory factor that leads to the difficulty of the said discipline is the decline in science education emanated from the notion of Gagnon and Mattingly of 2012, who studied schools' plan and other systems related to schools' resources and its distribution, as well as track result of shortage of some instructional materials, including books. So lack of interactive materials like books, videos, and audio-visual aids can contribute to such difficulty in understanding chemistry concepts. So in connection to this statement, this notion is in accordance with Section 10.3 of DepEd Order Number 43, Series of 2013, dealing with executing the rules and regulations of Republic Act Number 10533, known as the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. This section states that creation and enhancement of instructional learning materials shall be fostered among the 21st century educators according to the Department of Education of the year 2013. Likewise, as a solution, enhancing the quality of education motivates the students to take an active role. And in order to achieve this active participation in the educative process, there should have the implementation of a learner-centered approach. And one of these approaches will be the constructivist approach of Jerome Bruner in the year 1961. According to Bruner of 1961, under the constructivist approach, the learners will develop their own knowledge based from the experiences that will be provided by the teachers. And from these new learnings, there will be connection of the prior knowledge to the present knowledge to come up with meaningful learning. Hence, we have a long-lasting concept when it comes to education. And in order to solve this problem, in order to apply constructivist approach, one of the strategies under this approach is the so-called 5E's learning model for the curriculum and instruction of BIB 2006. 5E's instructional model consists of 5 major phases. First, engage, in which the learners will be motivated through a series of questions that will be asked by the teacher in order to introduce the new concept prior to the teaching and learning process, to visualize the real application. In addition, the second phase is known as explore. This is the stage in which the learners will be provided with learning activities that includes hands-on activities like experimentation. And through experimentation, the learners can make such hypotheses, they can gather facts and data, and from this, they can formulate their own conclusion. They can explore their own learning based from the given concept. And after the explore stage, we have the explain stage, in which under the explain stage, the learners will communicate the results of the activities provided. And at the end of explain stage, the teacher will come up with an in-depth discussion in order to correct the misconception. In addition, we have the next one, elaborate stage, in which there will be the application of the newly acquired knowledge. And the last, you have evaluate, in which it includes assessment at the end of the 5E's learning model. So this is known as the 5E's learning model of the 21st century science, technology, engineering, and mathematics for general chemistry. Okay? So in this case, to give you the example for the relevance of this study, for the students who are using 5E's learning model can enhance their ability in examining facts and evidences using their own knowledge. Learners can also apply inquiry approach to learn the chemistry concepts. For the teachers, through the use of 5E's learning model, instructional materials, teacher can develop their PCK, or the pedagogical content knowledge, which is essential for the educative process. And they can facilitate well the instruction for them to enhance the knowledge, skills, as well as the effective domain of learnings among the learners. Likewise, we have for the administrators. This study could help the school administrators to broaden their perspective in relation to the implementation of different educational programs that will serve as the catalyst of transformation to develop the different components of the 21st century STEM strand. So for the next part, in this study, the researcher considered research ethics. Before the conduct of the study, the researcher asked for permission of the school's division superintendent to ensure the availability of the 4 selected schools that were chosen in this study. The researcher presented a letter of request to the school's division superintendent along with the principals from each school in the division of Quezon. The researcher met the science teachers from the 4 selected public secondary schools personally for them to be oriented regarding the procedures. Moreover, the researcher conducted an interview with the teacher and respondents to perform the triangulation approach for the methodology to ensure the validity and reliability of their responses for the quantitative data. The researcher also explained the objective of the study to the respondents for both teachers and students before the researcher disseminates the said questionnaire. And likewise, the researcher used pseudonyms and codes to represent the names of the respondents to ensure confidentiality during the conduct of the study. So as part of this presentation, we have the following objectives, methodology to answer these objectives, as well as the corresponding findings and conclusion. For the first objective, to determine the topics in general chemistry 1 that are too difficult for senior high school students to learn, The methodology are as follows. First, in order to answer this objective, the researcher utilized questionnaire on the list of difficult topics. And for the data gathering procedure, the data was gathered based from the teacher respondents' assigned values for each topic in a form of Likert scale. So, the format of the said scale is a typical 4-level with the respective weights, and weighted mean was used to answer this objective. For the major findings, it was found out that the teacher respondents agree that the concepts dealing with gas stoichiometry and kinetic molecular theory, as well as quantum mechanical model of the atom and electronic structure, are very difficult. And it obtained a weighted mean values of 3.33 and 3.31 respectively. Okay? For additional idea, mole concept, calculations involving chemical formulas and equations, gas laws, electronic configuration, and the periodic table, as well as the periodic variation in atomic properties are difficult. These topics obtain weighted mean values of 2.96, 3.20, 3.23, 2.87, 3.19, and 3.20 respectively. And its corresponding conclusion, the perceived difficult topics in General Chemistry 1 includes the following: stoichiometry, gases, and the electronic structure of the atom. Next, for the second objective, to identify the factors that make the topics in General Chemistry 1 difficult, we have the following methodology. The researcher used questionnaire on the factors that cause difficulty in learning the perceived difficult topics in General Chemistry 1. The teacher respondents identified the factor that causes such difficulty in learning the perceived difficult topics in the said subject, and the frequency was used for statistics. For the major findings, the nature of the topic obtained the highest frequency values for the following concepts: mole concept, calculation involving chemical formulas and equations, gas stoichiometry, and the kinetic molecular theory, as well as the quantum mechanical model, electronic structure of the atom, and the periodic variation, along with the periodic table. On the other hand, student-related rating as the factor, making some selected topics in General Chemistry 1 difficult, as shown in its highest frequency value of 30 for the topic gas laws. So for the conclusion of this objective, the nature of the topic as well as the student-related factors make these subjects too difficult due to mathematical aspects, abstract nature, lack of motivation among the learners, since they cannot visualize the real-life application of the topics in their everyday lives that will lead to the understanding of the concept. For the third objective, to develop an instructional material integrated with 5E's learning model that will enhance the components of STEM curriculum and instruction. So the researcher used the following materials. So it includes reference materials, curriculum guide, as well as the curriculum for SHS STEM for DepEd. Then the identified causes of such difficulty were addressed in the said material. The content of the material consists of identified difficult topics in the said subject were considered. And the achievement tests were answered by the G12 students for pilot testing, as they are pre-test and post-test before and after the utilization of the 5E learning model. T-test for dependent sample was used. And for the findings, the 5E's learning model instructional material in enhance the components of the 21st century STEM curriculum and instruction was developed. So the developed 5E's learning model instructional material in General Chemistry 1 is ready for adoption. Note that the t-test for dependent sample here was used in order to test the significant difference between the profile of the control and experimental groups in terms of the pre-test scores and General Chemistry 1 subject. And for the data gathering procedure, the researcher used achievement test, Form 5, or the remote or report on promotion and level of proficiency. The scores in the pretest in General Chemistry 1 were recorded. The students' respondents' grade 11 general average were gathered also through the use of Form 5. And to test the significant difference between the control and experimental group, t-test for the dependent sample was used. So for the major findings, the overall computed t-value of 0.45 for the grade 11 average and 0.92 for the pretest score is less than the tabular value of 1.95. It means that there is no significant difference between the control group and experimental group for grade 11 general average and pretest score before the conduct of the study. And it means that the experimental group and the control group are equivalent before the conduct of the study as part of the major conclusion. For the fifth one, to ascertain out the significant difference between the post-test mean scores of the students in the control and experimental groups after using the 5E's learning model. So the researcher used the achievement test and the post-test scores were recorded after the utilization of the said material. T-test for independent sample was used. There is a mean difference of 16.86 between the post-test score of the experimental group, 64.07, and the control group, 47.21. The computed t-value of 10.58 is greater than the tabular value of 1.96 at 0.05 level of significance. It means that there is a significant difference between the experimental group and the control group in terms of the post-test score. It only indicates that this material is a valid tool in teaching General Chemistry 1 since the experimental group obtained higher mean value as compared to the examples. So this will be the end of the presentation for the study dealing with the 5E's teaching and learning model for the 21st century STEM curriculum for General Chemistry 1.